Hi, Carl. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Is this some like therapist thing or something?
What is next for Obscura?
Android. Android, kill switch, custom DNS, everything.
For folks the other side of the spectrum, like, what do you have to say?
Oh my lord. Do you walk around with your pants off all day?
Hi, everyone. I'm Vishnu. I'm the founder and CEO of Ente. Today, I'm talking to Carl Dong, who is the founder and CEO of ObscuraVPN. Hi, Carl. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, pleasure to be on. I'm Carl Dong. I'm the founder and CEO of ObscuraVPN. We're the first VPN that can't lock, won't lag, and works anywhere. And happy to be on.
Oh, that's a great intro. So I'll start with the first question, right? How would you explain what a VPN is to a 5-year-old?
Oh my lord, how would I explain what I have not gotten that question ever before. But I'm not sure how I'd explain it to a 5-year-old. But how would I explain it to, let's say, a functioning adult? Let's say, is an average adult is that I think in the physical world, when you're talking to somebody, right? If you're talking in the corner of a room or something, right? You expect to have some level of privacy. You don't think everybody in the room is hearing what you're saying, right? You certainly don't expect, let's say, the government is hearing what you're saying. On the online world, however, because, this is the digital world or whatever, it is like that, basically. Like everything that you say is being heard, by your boss, by your by the government, by your ISP, by everything that you say, that everybody that's there, right? And a VPN is simply a way for you to gain some of that privacy back to protect yourself against those things, especially the plain text, what we call plain text things that are going on.
Got it. So there are a lot of VPN services out there. How is Obscura different from the rest?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot. I'm happy to sort of walk through the story of how I even landed on this whole thing, right? Because it's not every day you're like, I'm going to go start a VPN company or anything like that, right?
Yes, please. Yeah, let's go to the story.
Yeah. I grew up for part of my childhood in Shanghai, and then went to London, and then came back to Shanghai, and then the Great Firewall came up, and I couldn't be on YouTube. It was a very big problem for a teenager, I think. And so I tried the commercial options. I built a couple of my own VPNs just for friends and family and myself. None of them really worked that well, or they would work and then stop working. But sort of throughout all my career, I've been looking at this market and seeing how it evolved. Right, and for a part of my my early career, I did a lot of Bitcoin Core work because I've always been a big fan of digital sovereignty, digital freedom, and things like that. But what happened, I think this was 2 years ago now. I took a look at what Apple iCloud Relay did. And you don't really expect like fundamental network innovation to come out of Apple, but it did. They did Apple iCloud Relay. That was really good. So Apple iCloud Relay really set the scene for all of these existing VPNs have this one problem in that they effectively become the person who overhears all of your conversations on the internet, right? And they know who you are because they have your credit card number, your like billing address, your email, everything else. And they now see all of the websites you're going to. It's just not it's a privately unaccountable company, right? So what Apple iCloud Relay did was basically split up this information, right? You have a first hop and a second hop. So in Obscura's case, we are the first hop, and Mullvad, another VPN server, is the second hop. It sounds a little complicated, but it's actually quite simple. First hop knows who you are, has no idea where you're going, what sites you're going to. Second hop has no idea who you are, and just connects you to the websites. And so that information is now split, and no single company has information on what you are. And I thought that was a really neat innovation, actually. I thought that was super neat. And so that's why I did prototypes on it. Obviously, I'm networking and performance nerd, and so we optimized it so that we have good performance. I mean, we're talking over it right now, right? And this is because like we've done the tweaks and we've done the optimization to make that work. And so this is why I like to say Obscura is the first VPN that can't log, won't lag, and works anywhere, right? We can't log in that there is literally nothing to log, because we don't have the information of what websites you're going to. We won't lag because, hey, we've done the optimizations and we've made sure that it works really well. And we work anywhere because we use our little special sauce networking protocol called Quick to make sure that our traffic look like regular internet traffic. So you're not going to be singled out. You're not going to be detected on the network. And so in those airport Wi-Fis or hotel room Wi-Fis where just like NordVPN will just stop working, or a random competitor will stop working, let's say, we do work because we've made that happen.
Correct. So the important takeaway from here is that there are two hops. There are multiple hops here. And you're basically saying that Obscura might know who I am, but you don't know what I'm looking for. And
exactly.
Hop might know what I'm looking for, but they don't know who I am. Right?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So here, how can I be certain that Obscura as a first hop cannot see enough metadata?
Right. That's a very good question. We'll have to get into the technical details of it, but for sure. Well, the way that you can think about it is this is sort of like an ELI5 question, actually. The way you can think about it is you have two lock boxes, right? And basically, when like a user wants to visit wikileaks.org, let's say, right? They first have their data and they put it in a lockbox that is can only be opened by Mullvad, which is our second hop. And then they put it in a lockbox that can only be opened by us, which is Obscura. And then they send the lockbox to us first, right? And then we see the lockbox. We can open the outer lockbox, right? Because this is a nesting lockbox now. We can open the outer lockbox, and we can see that there's an inner lockbox, but we can't open that inner one because we don't have the keys to it. Only Mullvad has the keys to it. And then we pass it on to Mullvad, who opens the inner one, let's say, right? But, Mullvad sees that inner lockbox is coming from us, so they don't know who sent it to us. That's sort of the key to this, right? They can open the inner lockbox and get the actual message, which is go visit, wikileaks.org or something like that, right? And so in this sort of a cryptographic way, we make sure that even though we have the locked box, because we don't have the key to it, there's nothing we can do to it other than just pass it on to Mullvad, or not do anything, in which case we'll lose you as a customer. So yeah.
Got it. So a lot of this was in the air, but if you guys over is listening, if they're interested, there is a great post on Obscura's blog about I think it's called Bootstrapping Trust, where I think slightly more elaborately about this, and that kind of gets into more technical details, and I think it's a really, really well written post. So yeah, maybe if you guys are more curious, do check that out.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for the technical people, I think they would be interested to know that we are wrapping a WireGuard connection in a quick connection, and the WireGuard connection is established between your local key and one of Mullvad server's keys. In fact, the Mullvad server's pub keys that you're establishing a connection with, you can verify that on Mullvad's official website, on mullvad.net/servers. And we show that in the app what it is. Yeah.
Got it. So now we're talking multiple hops, right? Is there a trade-off in terms of tech or UX, in terms of latency, because now we're introducing another hop into the architecture?
Yeah, I would. Well, I think latency is all relative, right? In terms of like, it depends on what data centers you're talking about, right? Because it always matters that if you're going with cheaper data centers, they're going to be not located well, so you're going to have further latency from the user. We only choose sort of the best, well-located servers in terms of where our users are, where Mullvad is, where everything else is, right? And yet certainly it is adding a hop, but we have made that impact as minimal as possible. I use Obscura for all my calls. I stream 4K HDR through Obscura. There has been no noticeable thing. It's so funny. I've actually gotten an email from one of our users that was like, you know what? I don't think Obscura is doing anything. It's so suspicious how fast Obscura is. I don't feel like I'm using a VPN at all. So I feel like you guys aren't doing anything. And I saw that email. I was like, thank you. That's that. I don't know. Like you wrote an angry email, but that's exactly what I wanted to hear. In terms of like, we've put in all the work on the client side, on the networking side to make it as smooth as possible, and that's what comes of it. So yes.
Right. That's actually a great compliment, right? Especially for a privacy company, wherein if it's
100%.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you said that Mullvad is the exit node, right, or the second.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Mullvad?
Many reasons, I would say. I think, I talked about how, growing up, I was using all of these VPNs and whatever, right? And I just remember, I forget, it was the last year of high school or college or something like that. I saw Mullvad and I clicked into it and I was like, they don't need an email? And I was like, wait, how does this work? And I generated an account number. I was like, wait, why did we even ever need an email for VP? Like, what, you could just, why not, right? And that was pretty crazy of an experience. And I've sort of followed their journey along. I feel like they do so much to establish trust, right? In terms of like the spearheading of the account number generator. I remember they were one of the first ones to accept WireGuard, which I thought was like, I think once WireGuard came out, like the protocol came out, it was so clear that this is where the VPN industry is moving. I thought it was very clear because OpenVPN is just a mess of a protocol, I would say. And the fact that they had the foresight to not only see it, to execute on it, to do the account numbers thing, and recently to completely even deprecate OpenVPN, which I thought was smart because you lower your sort of attack surface, let's say, in terms of cybersecurity. I just thought that they were one of the most trustworthy ones out there, and I had already been in contact with them for a number of years. So I was like, there's no other to start with for me, at least.
Got it. So now we're talking about multiple hops right now. Do you see this becoming the new standard for all VPNs out there?
Yeah, I believe so. I think VPNs will always offer the one hop solution, but I feel like with how much we've seen just with 2-hop and how low of a latency we can get, how high of a bandwidth we can get, it almost seems it seems like it's something that the industry should do to establish trust. I think there's this narrative out there now that like, oh, well, these VPNs see all of your data and they know who you are. They're just a honeypot. They're just trying to collect your information and whatever. And I'm sure there are free VPNs out there where this is their entire business model, right? But I feel like for the ones that are trying to be really trusted, I think doing the two-party thing is a very clear statement of like, our business model is just to serve you, basically. We just want to serve you the free and open internet. And that's a very powerful statement for a whole business that's reliant on trust, right? I'll say that there's big difference between two hop and two party. That's the difference that's the differentiation I always want to make, right? Because you can have within a single provider two hops, right? I think almost all providers have like multi-hop or whatever within their app, but to me that is much less of a interesting change in security model than two-party. Two hops within the same provider, well, you're just adding additional latency for no reason because it's still the same person with the same data all across, right? Like the person doesn't need to share data with anybody else, it's them, right? Whereas if it's two-party, now it's two different entities with different leaderships, with different, I mean, Mullvad's Swedish. I mean, we're here, like it's completely different people, and that actually offers an improvement in security model.
Got it. So now, do you have any further improvements planned for the architecture in terms of adding more parties or decentralizing things a bit more? Like, yeah, basically, are there any further improvements planned to the architecture?
Right. To me, that's very interesting. I think that we're totally open to partnering with other providers who want to be second hopped. I think that makes sense. I think that's sort of what we're about, let's say, right? I'll say sort of a word on decentralizing, let's say, and adding more hops and things like that, right? It really matters what the use case is. I think I'm very clear in that the way that I think we win the fight for digital sovereignty, digital privacy, and things like that is by making sure that the products and the tools that we build that are the privacy-friendly alternatives are as usable as the normal ones, right? And I want to make sure that I'm building tools that are suitable for everyday use. And this is why we've focused so much on performance. This is why we've focused so much on the UX, even to a fault sometimes. We want to make sure that this is something that you can turn on and use every day. Now, when you come to decentralized VPNs, when you come to adding more hops, when you come to things like Tor, which you can say is a semi-decentralized VPN, let's say, well, only for TCP and UDP. Partially for UDP. You have this problem, I think, of volunteer nodes, and somebody's cat could just trip on a power wire and your internet connection is disrupted. I don't want that as my main sort of internet connection, right? And it's slow and it just doesn't work often enough times. I think that the internet is something that we've come to rely on as a utility. And so that's why, like, we were very careful. Like, we have bare metal machines, right, in well-located internet locations, right? Mullvad also has those, right? And we sort of choose their best exits, let's say, to go towards. All that is to make sure that you have a really smooth experience and not one where it's slow or laggy or unreliable.
Got it. Totally makes sense. Is the comparison against Tor, right? I am curious to understand what do you think of projects like NIM, which are kind of trying to do the same thing but in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked too much into sort of the architecture and whatever. I would say that again, it's a trade-off thing, right? It's about what your security model is, right? So what NIM tries to do is a decentralized VPN. Actually, I think they have two offerings. One is like a WireGuard 2-hop, but both hops are NIM, and the other one is their decentralized sort of VPN thing, right? We've talked about the 2-hop where it's one provider. Let's talk about their decentralized VPN. I think for the decentralized VPN stuff, right? Again, it's the problem of, okay, you have, if it's decentralized, if I'm understanding what decentralized means correctly, it means anybody can run an exit node. Anybody can run a node that exits out to the internet. But the fact that anybody can do that means that you have a lot of people who are running nodes where their cat can trip over a power wire, and disrupt your internet connection, which I don't think is great. I think the internet should be smooth, and I shouldn't have to worry before I take a call if this call will be disrupted by a cat running over a power cable. But I will say it's great for if you have the sort of security model where you need some utmost version of privacy or something like that. In my sort of brain, what we do is great for 99.99% of people.
Correct. So, see, next I'll move on to the topic of reproducible bills, because this is something I am very curious about. Because
Yes.
as companies in the privacy space, the best way or one of the best ways to guarantee trust is by making a source code public, the other by making it easy to verify that our apps are indeed built from that same open source code. And in simpler terms, this is that bills are reproducible, or reproducible bills.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, this is an area that you've made important contributions in. And have you been able to deliver reproducible bills on the Apple ecosystem for Obscura?
Dude, I have a branch. I have tried. It's so we're able to do it, but it's so it's much less painful for apps that are not VPNs. I will say, it's actually much less painful. We are, what we have to do is I'll give a little background of how I'm related to reproducible bills and everything else, right? When I worked on Bitcoin Core, one of my main projects was revamping our reproducible bills project. And this is a huge thing in terms of improving it against nation state attacks, improving it against the technical people can look it up. It's Ken Thompson's trusting trust attack, where one compiler can be poisoned, and then every compiler in that generation will get poisoned and things like that. And literally on reproduciblebills.org, there's I've written stuff in the docs there. That's sort of how deep I am. And I think there's an open Tor project ticket of hey, maybe we should copy what Carl did for Bitcoin Core for reproducible bills. And I'm thank you. It's a big honor for me. It's super important. It's just a technical thing in terms of for VPNs that use the network extension API in Apple, there's a very particular way that Apple wants you to structure your app and sign things from the inside out. And some tools in Apple know about this, some tools don't. And Xcode knows it 80% of the time. And so there's this very specific orchestration that we have to do to even make this work in Xcode. And yes, I do have a branch out. We're going to do it for sure. But it was one of the harder ones. And look, for Bitcoin, we did reproducible builds, building from Linux to Linux x86, ARM64, RISC-V, ARM on Raspberry Pi, Windows, and Mac OS. And Android, I think at some point we had that too. So I will achieve this feat, but it takes a while.
Got it. Cool. I mean, all the best to you, right? I mean, once you do have it figured out, we'll be one of the ones to kind of piggyback on it. So
100%. Sounds good. I think this should be an industry-wide sort of effort, let's say. How do we make reproducible builds sort of the default? And I think it's great that everybody's doing it.
I think Telegram,
or at least looking into it.
At some point, but I think at some point, whatever they were doing just broke, and I don't think they've invested effort into it since then. But I remember Telegram being one of the first guys to actually offer reproducible builds on iOS.
Who?
Telegram.
Oh yes, Telegram. Yeah, they're. Oh my god, I hate to get into the weeds, but perhaps the technical people will like this. There are two ways to do reproducible builds, I think, every route of irreproducibility has things. I think what Telegram did was they were just like, we're just going to build a VM. Like, we're going to build the entire environment reproducibly and then try to build it reproducibly. What that doesn't take into account for is that things can leak, let's say, into the environment. For example, the current time can leak into the current environment. For example, if you're not installing a package in a pinned way, that can leak into irreproducibility. So at the end of the day, you really want to like patch your tools or make sure that your tools are producing the reproducible stuff. But anyway, I'm sure they'll figure it out one day.
This is actually interesting. I had not thought of the leaking variables bit, but yeah, thanks. Okay, anyway, I think maybe we should start moving on from tech before we start losing people who are listening. See, I want to move on to policy a bit, right? And it's because on the website there is this tagline that you have. It says, "I fight for the users," and privacy is under attack in so many states. There is chat control in EU. There is age verification now in UK, and so on. And in some sense, it does help privacy companies. Like, it does help VPN for like I remember seeing a meme from Proton at some point in terms of the graph just like shooting up.
Yeah.
Right. So in the short term, fine. Right. Now, where do you see this going in the long run?
It's very difficult for me to say. I will say, sort of like, as a private citizen, the private citizen part of Carl is not happy with what is happening across the world. I think that this is I don't know. I suppose somewhere in the back of my head I was like, okay, like, you know, sort of starting a VPN company is a hedge against something happening, but I didn't actually expect it to happen. I think that whatever happens, because of what we do and because of the mission of the company, I know that information wants to be free. I think that that's at the core of it. And I think that we should not let anybody abridge the fundamental rights that we had in the physical world, in the digital world. And I think that fundamentally our fight for a free and open internet is a righteous fight. And so I don't mind the challenges that come in front, because that's what we should do. That's what we should be. So yeah, I guess that's a sort of a non-answer, but I'm just, all we can do is do the best that we can and make our product as usable as possible and as accessible as we can to people, and that's our contribution. I think that's a very fair contribution.
Cool. See, I'll talk a bit about competition, because this is VPN is a very hyper competitive space. There are great companies doing great things, and then there are companies just distributing malware. And
yes.
What are the good companies, right? And what do you think are the good companies, and how do people stay away from the bad ones that I feel are actually designed and marketed better than the good ones?
See, I think that's the problem in our space, is like, the good ones don't design well, and I'm like, we gotta be better at that. Anyway, we still have improvements to be made as well in terms of design and everything else. I think it's been if anybody knows sort of the dynamics of the VPN company, right? There has been 3 conglomerates that have formed through all the mergers through I think 16 to 21, those 5 years, right? We have the Cape Technologies, right? We have Tesonet, and then we have Ziff Davis, right? And so I think Nord is under Cape Technologies, something like that, right? Nord and Surfshark, and then Tesonet has Express and things like that. And then we have Ziff Davis, which is actually an American company, which is very interesting. They have, I think, not the best alignment of interests with the user. I'm not sure that they have the best alignment of interest with the users, especially because they just, I think the other day we had one of our engineers sent me a screenshot of like the default settings for analytics on NordVPN. And it was basically everything was on, like send everything. And I was like, okay, I can understand, like, you know, you need to know, like, VPN is a very special business in that, like, you know, you actually don't know how well you perform all over the world. So I understand, like, we don't have it, but like, I understand a big enough company may want to be like, you can opt in to like, tell us how your internet is doing, right? But to enable everything by default, like, come on, man. Like, that, you just don't care at that point, right? Like, there's something fundamentally wrong with your company culture at that point. And so I think these three conglomerates, they've gotten to a point where they're run by the managerial class. You know, they're run by people who are actively enshittifying the product. And so I think the next sort of this upcoming wave, what's going to happen is providers like Obscura, like Mullvad, like Proton, like iVPN, providers who have a track record of actually caring about their users, about their privacy, about pushing forward the technology. Certainly, I haven't seen an innovation out of Nord or Express or whatever. They keep coming up with marketing names. Nord Links. It's just WireGuard, dude. They keep coming out with other marketing names for these things. But people who are pushing forward the tech and the privacy, those are the people that I think users should trust and are going to get pushed to the forefront.
Right. So, see, one growth vector for a lot of these companies that you mentioned was affiliate programs, and this is something that a bunch of other VPN companies that you put in the good list have kind of had a vocal stance against. What is your take on affiliate programs?
I think I haven't thought too much about this, so this will be off the top of my head. I think I'm not against affiliate programs. I'm against what happens when there are like twisted incentives, right? I remember I saw there was one post on Privacy Guys or something like that where some guy was saying, hey, like this guy is just posting an affiliate link on Reddit and like basically making money through the affiliate link by like cornering a Reddit, like a subreddit or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's not like, you don't want somebody, like you don't want your affiliate program to like incentivize somebody's whole job to be like astroturfing a subreddit. I don't know. It's just like, seems like a bad thing, right? But like, I feel like, you know, if you're doing like, I guess there's a difference between affiliate and referral. Like, if you're just referring friends and like they get a free month, you get a free month, I'm like, okay, like that seems harmless. And also like we want to win this battle, right? Like we want to win the battle in terms of like we want more people using actually private products. So as long as people are doing things ethically and in a well thought out way, why not?
Correct. So we spoke of design a bit earlier, right? And I feel that Obscura is one of the friendlier brands out there when it comes to VPN, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I feel that's common between Ente and Obscura, which is like both of us have like these cute little mascots. We have a duck,
Yes.
and we have an orange robot, and so yeah, does the orange robot have a name and like what's their origin story?
Yes. The name is Felix, and it's the origin of the name is kind of funny. I was just like, okay, what's like an internet-y name, you know? And I realized that both this is gonna be so young millennial coded that both what's it called, PewDiePie and XQC are their first names are Felix. So I was like, Felix is a very internet-y name, and we're gonna name him Felix. And it's so funny because we do, it's an 8-bit graphic robot, right? And so people are like, wait, what is this? So a lot of people on Twitter have been calling him a toaster. And that's hilarious. I don't even know where toaster comes from, but it's fun. It's fun. I totally think we should have in the privacy again. Like, my only thing is, like, privacy tech needs to win, right? And I think that we should have more friendly, approachable brands. Like, we shouldn't all be like Shield Guard or shady hoodie people. It's like, it doesn't appeal to people. It might appeal to like one or two hardcore people, but like we want the world to be like this. And I think there's a very positive, liberating side to privacy that should be explored more. So yes, we totally share that sort of vibe, let's say.
Cool. Yeah, great to know. Like, great to know about Felix. Yeah. Okay. So I'll get back to what we were initially talking about. Like, you had mentioned that you spent a non-trivial amount of your life contributing to Bitcoin, and I have been detached from that space since around 2020, since around the time NFTs came in, and there is a sense of disillusionment with respect to what I thought the technology stood for and instead of what it was being shielded for. And so I've kind of just disconnected, right? So I'm curious to know what has happened in that space since then. Like, are there any cool projects that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, I think so. I will say that, like, it sucks because the people who are heads down working on actual fundamental improvements, they don't quite like to do the be loud and try to promote everything, right? It's usually the things that would disillusion you, like, the other things that are very loud and out there. And so the fundamental things don't get enough attention, I would say. There have been quite a lot of improvements. I mean, just to list a few, we've had the Taproot soft fork, which I thought was great in terms of, now in not so many words, it allows for multi-signature transactions to look just like a single signature on the chain and only take up that amount of space. That is pretty freaking cool in my books. I think we've also had, Lightning Network actually mature because it is a somewhat complicated protocol in order to get things right, but people have settled on things now. There are multiple good implementations. There are good wallets with good liquidity. So much, in fact, that we accept Lightning for Obscura top-ups. And we've had double-digit percentage of people paying with Lightning. It actually works, and it works great. And one of the reasons why we were like, we're going to start with Lightning is because it's fast and instant, and how it goes instantly, right? In terms of because it settles within a few seconds, let's say within a few TCP round trips, you don't have to have a separate state in your database that's it's confirming. It's had 1 confirmations on the blockchain or 3 confirmations, it completely eliminates that. That UX is so smooth for both the user and the merchant and everything else. And it's been great. We've had other improvements like silent payments and things like that. Things that I think people are not shelling as much because they're not this is not fresh and fancy and flashy and is not going to make you rich overnight, let's say. But the ball gets pushed forward. Certainly, when you're building technology that is civilizational tech, you need to be patient. You need to ignore the noise that is out there, and you need to just keep pushing things. And I still meet up with my friends who do Bitcoin Core work, and they're doing some great work, and they keep pushing it forwards.
Got it. So you mentioned Taproot, right? And in general, there have been some privacy-focused projects or privacy coins that I've also kind of just been interested in. So what is your take on those projects like Monero and ZCash?
Oh, I think it's great. I don't speak for all core developers or former core developers or whatever, but I think that we need more experimentation. I think that we need because at the end of the day, right? Like the reason why ECDSA, let's say, what was chosen for Bitcoin was because it had like decades of being attacked, basically, right? So the more the merrier. Like if you had multiple decades of ZK snarks out there, right? Like Monero ring signatures and things like that. I think it's great that we have now these live honeypots, live piñatas out there, let's say. And I think it's good that over time time will tell whether the cryptography and the architecture is good enough, and I think that's excellent. I think the more competition, the better. And I will say that Bitcoin by its design is I will admit it's not the most private. It's pseudonymous, let's say, rather than anonymous in terms of its payment model and things like that. And Lightning makes it a lot better. But before the Monero people freak out on me, it's not perfect either. Okay, please don't freak out on me. I understand.
Got it. So, see, earlier you referred to Bitcoin as like civilizational tech, right, which I think it is a great way of putting it. Imperfections aside, it has pushed the world to a place where it might not have gone without it. What I would like to know is what you think will the long-term use cases be for Bitcoin?
I think that's very interesting. I think it's always going to be you see this sort of in what's been happening so far, right? It's sort of a hedge that the common folk have against oppression in and of a way, right? Because it's permissionless, because anybody can participate in the network, anybody can do whatever. It's sort of a technical problem to a social, technical solution to a social problem in that, because this exists, governments and larger bodies like that will think twice before being too oppressive, let's say, with their monetary and fiscal policy, because they know that their civilians always have the option to opt for Bitcoin. Now, I would very much, that sort of always remains in a fine balance, right? In terms of some people say, Bitcoin didn't reach mass adoption, so, it's a failure of a thing, right? But certainly we get a lot of payments through Bitcoin, but also in the end, did it fail if it was sort of the hedge that made governments do actions, made them more moderate, made the fiscal and monetary policies more sane? I think it worked pretty well. I think that's what Bitcoin is going to be, the ultimate hedge.
Got it. And what is your take on stablecoins?
I think they're cool. It has just, I don't know. It depends on your trust model. It always depends on your trust model, right? I have a problem with anything that's bridging the physical and the digital world and claiming that it bridges the digital and physical world when there is no trustless way to bridge the digital and physical world other than proof of work. That's basically the only way we found to trustlessly bridge the digital and physical world. Okay, you say you have $500 million in the bank and it's backed by $500 million. How am I supposed to know that you have that, right? You could just be, we've had, in U.S. history, let's say, many banks that are under-backed, let's say, by actual assets and gone under. But that is not to say that any of them are. I think that, I think a lot of them are actually genuinely trying to do a good thing. But I think it's just a completely different use case than other cryptos. And I think they will have their use. And I think one of the reasons, let's say, why stablecoins have been so successful is because Bitcoin exists, as I was talking about with the hedge, right? In a world where Bitcoin doesn't exist, stablecoins would be shut down day zero. Their offices would be raided and they would be shut down. It's only because Bitcoin exists and Bitcoin can't be shut down that stablecoins are able to exist.
Right. Cool. So moving on, we had built this tool a couple of weeks back called PrivacyPack, wherein we were just showing.
Yeah, I love it.
Right, and then there are privacy-focused alternatives that are out there, and Obscura is on it. And I'm curious to know what Carl's PrivacyPack would look like. Like, what are some privacy-focused projects that you actually genuinely enjoy using?
What are some privacy that I genuinely... I think the main one would be Signal, and then just self-hosting most of my stuff. Like, I have my own NAS. Look, now that I'm like really busy with Obscura, like the infrastructure it's not great. But I have my own NAS. I host my own password manager. Somebody at the CIA is writing this down and being like attack vectors, and everything else. I don't recommend it, I would say, for a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, they should use Ente, honestly, because like some end-to-end encrypted cloud service is just much easier. But I am like a Linux and self-hosting and systems freak. And so I like, when I'm like a little bit down, I'm like, I'm going to go work on my home server. I'm going to go work on my self-hosting stack. So that's what I get joy out of. Yeah.
Correct. For those listening, if you're interested, you can self-host Ente as well. It's a single command. But like Carl said,
okay, I did not know that.
The best idea for you. So,
I should do that.
Right. But in general, at least I am see, one thing is to keep my own copy. The other thing is to kind of take ownership of the infrastructure being resilient and reliable. Yeah. And especially with stuff like photos and passwords, there is the expectation that when you're not around, someone else might want access to it. And the last thing I would want my wife to worry about is a dude, like, he has his server and like she doesn't know how to administer it and like how to get stuff out of it. So there is that angle to it, to self-hosting, but there is definitely joy in tinkering, right? Like, I think we all come from that side of things, and you can't really put a price on that. And like, anyway, so moving on. So out of all these products that you use and you don't use, is there a product that you wish you had a privacy friendly alternative for, where you actually genuinely enjoy the product, but they're kind of evil in some sense, and you just wish there was a friendlier alternative?
Oh, dude, I've been to-do lists.
Okay.
To-do lists and notes. It is the bane of my... I only allow myself like once a quarter a day to work on this, but I have like a branch somewhere where I do some crazy what's it called, Merkle search tree plus polytree, advanced CRDT structures to make like a sort of a distributed to-do list that can sync locally very efficiently across different devices. I only allow myself one day out of the quarter to work on that. But I want to-do lists and notes that are good. There have not been a good one yet in terms of the user experience that I want and the privacy aspect. Like, for example, I know that Obsidian is probably good, but like I don't have the source code. So like that just, I can't see the source code. I'm like, I can't trust that, ultimately. So hopefully that comes about soon.
Right. So I used to use standard notes. I still use standard notes for notes, basically. Then I use Notebook for a lot of my to-do list and work stuff. I'm not sure if you've checked out Notesnook. It does solve some of your problems.
Notesnook. Okay, I should check that out.
Yeah, it's a nice project. It's open source, it's cross-platform, and their
Very
implementation of
cool.
CRDTs is a bit off in some sense. Like conflicts don't really resolve all the time, but at the end of the day, I mean, it works, and I can't really
Yeah.
complain. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So we'll switch things up a bit, right? I'll throw a bunch of words at you, and you will have to tell me the first word that comes to your mind. The idea is to think as little as possible. Are we good?
Is this some like therapist thing or something?
Let's
Okay.
hope it doesn't get that dark. But cool, I'll start. Right, like, so Apple,
Okay. Design.
Google,
Meta. I don't know why Meta came into mind, but
cool. Twitter,
bird. I want the bird back. I think that's what it is. I want the bird back. I don't like the X.
got it. Obscura,
I'm not. Look, you're just making me think of the icons now. Can't log, won't lag, and works anywhere.
one word.
One word. Friendly.
Nice. Nod,
Old.
Bitcoin,
Future.
Monero,
Orange. I don't know why orange came up.
chat control,
Europe? Look, this is terrible for word association. What is happening?
okay, this is more fun than I thought. Right. Cool. See, moving on. Right. I think we've spoken a lot about work, and I kind of
Yeah.
want to understand what your life and lifestyle is like as a founder. Like, what are your hobbies, and how do you balance your work with rest of whatever is your life?
Yeah. Balance. Interesting word. Haven't heard of it in a while. Well, we worked really hard to push forward Obscura and everything else. I suppose. What do I even do? I've been. So I try to leave myself sometime. I usually go home late from the office, but I usually try to leave myself sometime to either watch a TV show or play some games. I feel like I need that before I go to bed, or else my mind's just going to be swirling with work stuff in bed, and I'll never be able to go to bed. I love. I've most recently been playing the Metal Gear Solid 5. I've been replaying. It's Kojima is just so good, man. He's just so good at what he does. I mean, it's like 9 years later now, and it's just still top tier. So I've been playing that. I like stealth, and so yeah, that's what I do.
Cool. And what is next for Obscura?
What is next for Obscura? Android. Kill switch, custom DNS, everything. Everything is like sort of, and people keep asking me, and I feel like an obligation to them to do it much faster, which is sometimes I don't get rest. But like that's what what's next, and they are all in progress. And Monero, and they're all in progress right now, and I'd be very happy the day we get to announce all of them.
So what's kill switch?
Kill switch is to make sure that even if your VPN app crashes, that your the traffic doesn't leak to ClearNet. I think that's what people. There are many different definitions of kill switch, honestly. So you'll have to ask the particular person. But yes.
I know that's really cool.
Basically what it
Really cool. Cool. So, see, I'm sure there are some folks in the privacy community who are listening. Do you have any words for them?
I would say that I think that we are in the righteous fight of our lifetimes of sort of this stage of civilizational development, and that we should band together as people who champion, who understand this kind of stuff, instead of some of the infighting that I see. I think that we should be honest about where our differentiators are, honest about what security models we aim to target for, but also just not bash other companies and for having different security models, and come together to push the whole industry forward.
Great message. Right? And now, for folks the other side of the spectrum, like, what do you have to say to folks who say they have nothing to hide?
To say that you have that say that they have nothing to hide, oh my lord. I think it's less to them. I would say, you say you have nothing to hide. Do you walk around with your pants off all day? I mean, it really is like, do you have transparent bathrooms in your house? No, there's a fundamental level of expectation of privacy, and it's only when you lose it and it gets exploited that you understand how important it is.
Right. So those are all the questions I had, Carl. Thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation. I think what you folks are doing at Obscura is really cool, like bringing legitimacy back to VPNs in some sense, and making privacy accessible to those who actually need it the most, right? And
yes,
in a friendly way, in an approachable way. So I think all of these are very cool. So I wish everyone at Obscura the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vishnu.